and change.
So really, all you're doing is changing the teacher pay from the previous request. You're pulling $100 million out of that, putting into the student proficiency line item. Everything else pretty much stays the same and saves taxpayers $60 million.
Yes, sir. And again, as we go through this, happy to explain why the changes were made and also why the request remained the same. Part of this is just, again, when you look at the funding formula and the weighted students, again, we do have an increase of students. And so we look at the funding formula with the weighted students there. So right here, we do have the weighted average daily membership. That is a bump from 2023 to 2024. So this is why we have an increase in operational costs. Again, very slight, but that is where that came from. There you go. Teacher and student count. Again, this is something that I think that this is data that is needed as well as we make these decisions. While we have an increase of students, we do have less teachers in the classroom. This is a significant problem. We have to retain our teachers, but we've got to attract great professionals to enter into the profession, where this trajectory will continue as we have an increase of students and a decrease in staff to put a lot of pressure on the teachers and the support staff. So that's where I believe we have a real sense of urgency to incentivize our best and brightest to stay, but also to recruit. On the next slide, you're going to see some specifics around this teacher incentive pay. Total request is $150 million. What we're looking at here is this is in addition to the minimum salary schedule, where we will base this incentive pay package will be based on two items: the teacher leadership evaluation tool, so that rating system, which again provides districts the ability to rate and evaluate teachers given a variety of factors. So in that rating, there is a student performance. There's also the ability for teachers to show their practices in the classroom and how they are effective. So it is a tool that it can be utilized to give a broad view of whether you're a first grade math teacher or a second grade art teacher or high school physics teacher. There is that discretion so that the district can properly evaluate individuals. And the second one is to utilize the professional learning hours completed towards their professional learning focus. This is a professional development tool that's been developed that allows teachers to show professional growth, but gives them a lot of flexibility to show that growth. Teachers can show that growth by being nationally board certified. They can show that by taking trainings outside of the classroom in order to hone their craft and hone their skills. They can go to trainings across the state that are provided by the State Department. They can also seek out other tried and true practices to help them become better teachers. This allows them to specifically identify those areas of which they want to grow and then show that they have grown and show that it will make a difference with our kids. The initial incentive ranges we've identified are starting off with $2,500. That can go over to $10,000 for individual teachers. We believe that we have to find ways to find teachers who are doing a great job, number one, but also incentivize them as they continue to grow. And we see teachers that are getting better every year through professional development. We have to keep these teachers. We have to retain these teachers. And this is a very aggressive plan to do that. But it's what we need for our teachers across the state of Oklahoma. Any questions on that before? Again, we can go over any of it at the end, but before I'm going to kind of shift a little bit into the $100 million reading sufficiency proficiency plan.
Yeah, I mean, this is all very similar to what we've already passed previously. I think we wanted to skip ahead to the $100 million for the student proficiency.
The first thing I'll say is there was a request initially. You asked me about saying the same. There was a request in an additional reading sufficiency budget that we are keeping that the same, and I do want to show you why that request was made initially, why we want to keep it the same. Here are the RSA students, the Reading Sufficiency Act students that were identified as at risk in the beginning of the year. I'm going to point out a few things with these numbers for you. And again, this is why the initial ask was made and why this aspect will remain the same. What we have here is, if you notice through the years, there have been some students that have been identified and there has been a drop. If you'll notice, forgive me, I'm colorblind, so I'm making sure I'm got it all set. So the bottom line there is kindergarten. So we do have a drop in RS students that were perceived as at risk, and this is with reading. Okay, so it's the Reading Sufficiency Act, but I want you to notice the one that's gone up. We see, and forgive me, of not seeing exactly what color that is we got orange. Orange, the third one there. Okay. Notice it's going up. And these are students that are in third grade. These are students that are going to be asked this coming year in their fourth grade to be taking a test that will be evaluated in our NAEP assessments. That's that key data point that education experts around the state say is so key, and that number has gone up. Remember, these are students that got into school during COVID. These are students that had to initially, that was their first couple of years in the school setting. And so you do see that number on the rise. And again, I think this really shows a sense of urgency. This is why the initial request was made at a month, is because we have identified some more of those students that do need that intervention. But I'll be really frank, this isn't enough. It's not enough. As we look across other states, we see states that have dramatically grown. If a student can't read going into third and fourth grade, the likelihood of them graduating on time, the likelihood of them having mastery in other subjects is greatly diminished. For Oklahoma to get our education system back on track, every child has to be able to read by fourth grade. This is where the new spending comes in. Under our student proficiency plan.
Ryan, may I interrupt?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I think it's obvious that I want to just state this to make sure I'm reading it properly. So from, say, 2017, if we look at all categories, kindergarten through third grade, until today, each one of those grades have had an increase in the students at risk. Every single, and that's, as you pointed out with third grade, every single year since then, it's gotten worse. I understand.
And this is where, again, the disruptions that came during COVID. You had school shutdowns, which obviously were a major part of it, but the virtual learning, while we have seen some students excel, especially in later grades, on that path to virtual learning, you know, there's a lot of anecdotal stories, and there's some stories of students that were able to really utilize virtual learning in rural areas, and some subjects weren't available to them. But in the earlier grades, it is incredibly difficult for students, especially that struggle in math and reading.
And even before COVID, it's been worse.
Yes, sir. Yes, these trends predate COVID. We have had drops in our reading scores going back 8 years now, that we have continued to see an overall decrease in our reading scores. Again, I'm mainly talking about our NAEP scores, but that is the nation's report card. Those are the assessments that allow us to compare apples to apples with other states. We have seen a progressive downward trend in our reading. And I mean, that's fourth grade and eighth grade. But this focus has to be, and again, we've got to do all of the things. But this is one that if we don't get this part right, any investment in eighth grade, and as you know, if you talk to high school teachers, you talk to teachers that get students later, it gets progressively more difficult when students can't read at the later levels. And again, you look at this trajectory in all subjects. If you can't read, when you're in a science class and you're given assignments, if you can't read and understand what you're reading, you're not going to perform well. And now even in math, we look at the ACT and ACT. A lot more of these math problems they're reading problems. So, and a lot of it, I mean, you do use math skills, but if you can't read and understand the question and the problem solving, it's very difficult. And when you talk to employers across the state, as I know you are, if you can't read, if you can't move up, you can't understand the directions in the workforce. And so this not only is an issue inside our schools, but we're hearing it in the workforce every day as well about employees. This is bold. This is aggressive. It's the most comprehensive reading plan in the country is what this would be. $100 million would go towards these buckets. We'll create an instructional coaching network. This network will utilize teachers in the classroom today. It will also utilize folks outside the classroom. You've heard the numbers of folks that have teaching certificates that aren't in our classrooms. You've heard about folks that want to volunteer and be engaged in classrooms. This would actively utilize teachers in the classroom, but also teachers outside the classroom to bring them in to get our students the maximum support possible. That goes into the second point about tutoring support network as well. We need folks reading with kids. We need folks who have the understanding of the science of reading, interacting with kids. This is essential to get these students back on track. And it takes staff, it takes individuals to do this. We also have a regional education administrative districts. And again, we have to ensure that everyone interacting with students on reading are trained in science of reading and understand best practice and have the materials. High quality materials is essential. We know that there's parts of the state that have had difficulty getting these materials, that do not have the most high quality reading materials available. That's unacceptable. We need every education professional to have the best resources so that our kids can read.
How quickly do you think $100 million in investment in this, as a return on investment? Like, is the goal to make this orange third grade line start coming down so less students start the year off at risk? Is it better scores on the NAEP in fourth grade? Like how will you gauge success in this program?
Good question. I would say several things to that. I would say, first of all, the test scores on the Oklahoma state test give us a great indicator going into NAEP, how individual districts are doing. NAEP is a snapshot across the state. So we need to see our individual districts that are performing well and see every single child and see where that's going on. So that has to be part of the criteria. Are our students learning the way that they should, or are they reading on a grade level? The other part is I agree 100%. This number should drop. As we implement this program, this number should drop of students that are identified to start the year. They should be able to read based on their previous year's experience. And these programs can be embedded over the summers as well. So that number should go down. And then to your point, in 2 years, our NAEP scores should absolutely dramatically increase. Those are metrics that absolutely should be increasing to show student performance.
Do you see any difference in implementing this program in large metro areas versus smaller rural schools? Is there different challenges? I mean, I think there might be some different challenges there. How do you think about that?
There's no doubt that those are different challenges, right? The challenges of an urban district is different than the challenges of a suburban district. Is different than the challenges of a rural district. And just to stand up a program like this quickly, we will need to ensure that rural districts have the support that they need to stand this up. And so I look at things, we want to use existing staff. You also want to be putting out an RFP to see what vendors can help those districts quickly move in this direction. So it is a multifaceted approach to ensure that no matter the district, no matter the challenges of the district, they have the ability to get these programs up and running. And this is something we've heard from rural districts as I've met with rural administrators across the state, is so many times programs get to our inner city schools much faster than our rural areas. And we have to be very cognizant of that. We will be in the department. We will be responsive to our rural school districts. We will ensure that they are able to get these programs up and running as soon as possible with a sense of urgency there. And I do agree, there are unique challenges in rural areas. And so I think we have to have that type of partnership with them and provide all of those available pathways.
I just want to say, I've been disabled for those 2 years. It was really nice to deal with actual education issues and targeted dollars focused on improving kids' outcomes. So thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The dyslexia intervention grants, are those grants provided to the students that need to be tested? And is that testing done by certified professionals at the school, or is it outsourced and that funding goes to provide the testing on the school property?
Fantastic question. You're spot on with that question when it comes to one of the things that we've seen, other states have seen this as well, is there's a lot of students that the issue with reading is dyslexia. And when it goes unidentified, there's nothing more frustrating for a child than suffering from dyslexia and being told to read and not having the proper intervention, training, and support to allow them to read. So what we need to do is, first of all, we have to identify those students. Number one, have to identify them, and that takes certified professionals in order to do that. What this would do is, first of all, bring in those folks that are trained to do that, and train staff in schools across the state in order to provide them that certification. Where not only can they identify individuals with dyslexia, they can become certified so that they can certify additional staff. This is where this investment will continue to pay off. Once we have these certified folks in every district across the state, it will then continue to grow as they certify other members of the district to continue building this out, because there doesn't need to be a child that suffers from dyslexia that has not been identified and we do not begin immediate intervention with them to help them get back on track. And that's what this will do initially, but it will also continue to grow in that as we have the certified staff to then train the trainers type model here.
So I love seeing this because I think that is a problem that a lot of students have, and at a young age, if they're identified earlier, and the sooner that they're identified, the more quickly it can be addressed and corrected. Does this also cover, because dyslexia can often be just the surface symptom, and there could be auditory and visual processing disorders, there could be other neuropsychological disorders, and those need to be addressed by either a neuropsychologist or someone that, as you said, is certified in diagnosing, properly testing and diagnosing these issues. So what happens after that? Is there work with does there need to be an outside entity that this money might be available to provide for?
That's another great question. Yes, that's where giving districts the ability with some flexibility in the grants process gives them the ability to, some districts have these professionals on site. We have seen some districts able to do that. There are some that have not been. So in the grant process, it allows the districts to identify the needs that they have so that they have some flexibility. And again, that is one of the criteria, but yes, they would have the ability to bring in staff that are professional in order to do that. Because again, to your point, there can be additional issues that can be identified, and to give them the flexibility to meet those issues as well. Another one that comes up a lot that gets identified through a process like this is dysgraphia. And that's another one, and so, but what this would do is give flexibility for districts. Again, we also want to be cognizant of some districts have done great work in really staffing this up. So they may, again, to your point, want to utilize some of the grant dollars to, well, dysgraphia, some of the other neurological issues that could be identified here. If it relates back to intervention in accordance with dyslexia, they could have the flexibility to do that. So we don't want, don't necessarily mean punish, but we want to give districts flexibility who have really jumped into this feet first to really take this on, to be able to utilize these to further their program. And then I'll mention the last one is one that, again, is essential to this plan as well. And this is to grow your own model of ensuring that districts are able to get staff in the door. And this looks very different. This can look very different. This can be high school students that are coming in to be assistants to teachers, and students that are in colleges of education being able to work in the district during the day while they're attending their college of education classes at night. And the reason this is so important is because we've got to empower districts to grow their own educators. We have seen this done in small scale. We need this done statewide. We need to empower our districts to find great folks, get them into the profession, get the support needed now, but then build out their staffing model with teachers they've worked with, that they've embedded in the culture of their school, that they have had the ability to work with them while they're getting the training necessary. This is going to be essential in getting teachers into the classroom and knowing that every teacher that enters our classroom from here on out is trained in the science of reading if they're working with pre-K through third grade students. This allows districts to really have the power to control that process. I mentioned this, and again, this is great testament to our legislature in the budget that they allocated to education last year is that this is a flat funding request because of the carryover that was provided to them, provided for our education system last year for the flexible benefit allowance. Very, very appreciative of that. So that's flat. Textbook adoption did go up, and I wanted to address this as well. Textbook adoption will go up because of and again, the legislature gave flexibility here, which I think was very important in that depending on the year of textbook adoption, the price of textbooks, it varies. And when we're looking at English, ELA, world languages, to do this at the secondary level is a bit pricier than elementary ELA. So since the legislature has given the department the flexibility here, our request will be a slight uptick there to ensure that districts have the ability to get the highest quality instructional materials in their classroom. So that's the reason for the bump there. And that's the reason why, if you notice why it was flat. And then now we've got some fluctuation up and down because of that flexibility that was provided. A couple of the other things, again, I mentioned this earlier, the administrative support, slight bump here. These are some of the specifics that we've seen as bumps in the budget. These are compliance, oversight, operational functions is really your biggest part of this. This was the request made originally to this board. We see that as the same. We have seen an increase in cost. So that's the reason for the slight bump there. So that's a number that remains the same from the previous ask. Now here's where you're going to see the big jump here in the support for students and teachers. This is the additional dollars that we laid out in the teacher pay review. So that's, again, the significant jump here. No, I'm sorry. This is the Proficiency Act. My apologies. This is the support of teachers and students. So that's where you're going to see that roughly $100 million there. Now, in your handouts here, again, we have the specifics. There are a lot of line items here from the legislature. Again, more than happy to answer any questions on those. A lot of very effective programs here. Imagine Math, Imagine Reading have been excellent. Ag in the Classroom, AP training. Happy to go over any of these numbers with you as well, and some of those that were laid out there. But again, those are things the legislature line item for us. Again, programs that have shown a great ROI for our kids. And I will pause there. I did a lot of talking through that, and appreciate the questions throughout. But I want to stop and entertain any questions, feedback, analysis over this budget that's been presented.
I make a motion to budget.
One second.
Sure. We've got a motion to and a second to approve the budget that's been presented today.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Burden?
Yes.
Ms. Leathcott? Yes. Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Superintendent?
Yes. Thank you, board, and I look forward to taking this budget to both the House of Representatives and Senate to present to them and submit to the governor. Now, item number 4 on the agenda is public comment. So we have a list here. Okay. So I can just run through.
How long do I have to speak?
Yes, so
Yes, sir.
for people who have requested to present open public comment on an item that is on the agenda, they have 4 minutes, and for non-agenda items, it's 3 minutes, and I will help keep track of time. So the first is, I think this is it. Yeah.
You said what? Okay, that's, okay, got it. Okay, all right, first person we've got on, so I'll just call them out. Yes, okay. We have Jan Barrick here with us today from Alpha Plus to talk to us about being a top 10 state. Love the subject there. Three minutes, okay.
Honorable State Superintendent Ryan Walters and members of the State School Board. My name is Jan Barrett. My team and I have been working to improve schools in Oklahoma since House Bill 1017 became law in 1990. Because I have been attending state school board meetings for over 30 years, it is an honor to be at this podium today and address you. At the beginning of each term, I am always hopeful that our state will climb in national rankings rather than linger at the bottom. For Oklahoma to be among the top 10 states in education has been a vision of mine since I was in graduate school at the University of Oklahoma. I recall studying state rankings. Why was Oklahoma always ranked in the bottom 10 and Massachusetts ranked ranked Oklahoma's accountability system as strong across all measures, only 1 in 7 states. Finally, I thought, we had all the pieces, but 4 years later, our rankings continued to drop. We are going in the wrong direction. Why? I could tell you, but it would take more than 3 minutes. The bottom line is Oklahoma students are as smart as any in the nation. We have good teachers. We have dedicated school leaders and board members and patrons. It is imperative that we fix public education for our students' future and indeed for Oklahoma's future. Today, I am asking to be a voice in your team's request to make Oklahoma a top 10 state in education. My team has the metrics. We have the prototype. We have the tools.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
It would be an honor to serve on your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. The next person up for public comment, we've got Ashley Daly, public school parent. For 3 minutes, Ashley.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. Welcome, Superintendent Walters and our new board members. I am Ashley Daly. I'm a 6th generation Oklahoman. I'm the mother of a 7th generation Oklahoman, and she's a 1st grader at an Oklahoma public school. I've been attending these meetings since August because I believe parents belong here, Superintendent Walters. Your recent words, the words that you use about teachers and about, well, your divisive words make me feel unwelcome in this room where I think I belong. Please stop calling teachers indoctrinators. Please don't say that they're pornography pushers. And please don't say that they are groomers. The teachers I know are selfless and they are kind. They are not waging a civil war. Are the teachers that you worked with, is that what they were doing? These words have no place in this office. Oklahoma's Constitution mandates a system of free public schools where all our students may be educated. You were elected to uphold the rights of the 700,000 students in our public school system, and these students depend on it for food, care, and education. They didn't vote for you, but they are depending on you. They need you to focus on bolstering the system and not name-calling teachers. Remember that it is a precious, holy honor to be elected to serve. You have a constitutional mandate, all of you on the board do, to bolster schools, public schools, and not tear them down. You said that you care about the science of reading, and all these ideas seem very good, but the simplest and most proven answer is to have smaller class sizes and to pay teachers so much more. That's a fact. To ignore that we know the best way to teach reading is, and to not demand it right now and fund it right now, lower class sizes and more teacher and better paid teachers, is to rob my daughter and her 700,000 classmates of their constitutional rights and their best futures. Stop these fake wars about fake enemies. Please stop saying angry and mean words. And for the record, I want my daughter to learn about Black history. I want her to learn about Native American history. I want my daughter to learn history based on facts and not feelings. And she will feel uncomfortable. And I am certain she will promise herself that she will never, ever stand for exclusion or violence or cruel words. And she will commit to make the world a better and more loving place. And I think all our students are smart enough and strong enough to learn hard things and then do better than those before them. And I pray that we are too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
The next person we have on the list, Chris Tanner, I believe, Chris Tanner from Nowata. You said 4 minutes. It's an agenda item. Okay, since it's an agenda item, thank you. It's 4 minutes.
Superintendent Walters, I just was, I'm before you today to talk about the waiver on agenda item number 6, number 8, under no other schools. We had certified the OCAS reports on Wednesday. I believe Catherine Black at State Department discovered we had a miskeyed entry. We unlocked it, fixed it. We locked it, but I failed to certify it until Monday morning before school started. I was just here to answer any questions about the waiver request. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you being here for that, Chris. Very, very helpful. Superintendent. All right. Next on the list, Mary, I'm sorry, this last name, I'm not sure.
Starts with a K.
Mary Kay.
Going once.
All right, find where we are here on the agenda. That was item 4. Okay, so item 5, administrative discuss and possible action of the minutes of the December 15th, 2022 regular state board meeting of education.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
And now, Mr. Clary, could I have the same question? They weren't here, do they get called on to vote? They just abstain?
No,
Or they can vote?
they can vote. They can vote because they have been, if they saw the meeting, and I think that they did, because I know that was sent to them. So we can take a vote and get to a quorum.
Okay. Motion second.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reynolds. Aye. Mr. Burdick.
Aye.
Ms. Leathcott.
Aye.
Ms. Wesson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Superintendent Walters.
Aye. Yes, thank you. Now we have a consent docket here. So we've got discussion of possible action on the following deregulation applications, statutory waivers, and exemption for the 22-23 school year.
Normally, I understand there's a change.
Next item.
Sure. Yeah, so let me talk to you about 6D. It is my understanding that there are some additional OCAS waiver requests. And so rather than take them up piecemeal, I think it makes more sense to take no action on this item. It would come back to you in December and in February. And based on the discussion with staff, it seemed as if that delay isn't going to fundamentally change anything for these schools. So that'd be the recommendation. Take no action on D, and it could be back on the February agenda.
All right, so motion would be to approve or deny A through C, table D.
It doesn't even have to be tabled. You could just take no action. And what I'm telling you is it seems most likely that it seems it will come to you in February.
I spoke with Ryan Piper. I'm good. Thank you as always, Ryan. For items A through C, do you guys have any questions? Okay, I make a motion to approve consent docket items A through C.
I'll second.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Ms. Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Wesson?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Booth?
Okay, next on the agenda item is item number 7, legal services. And we're gonna have Brian Cleveland, General Counsel here, make this presentation.
To start with item 7A, there was one report that was filed under that statute in Tulsa. And I understand that that report, when I looked at it, did not seem to have anything relating to that statute. And so I think the matters that were otherwise raised in the complaint were handled appropriately at the local level. That's sort of the report I have right now.
You don't look like you've been here before. Which you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly can do. I am Brian Cleveland. I am the new general counsel for the department, taking over for Brad Clark, keeping the initials the same to make all the labeling right. Some of you may recognize my name from the Attorney General's office, where I most recently worked before transferring over to the agency. So that's my report for item A, and then item B. I have a few details on sovereign communities.
Sorry.
No worries. So this item was tabled from the December 2022 meeting. And so since I started in January, I've been working to get myself up to speed on the issue and to hopefully share with all of the board, including the members of the meeting, what are the details and sort of what I see relating to this school and sort of what are the possible options for it. To be precise, the motion that was tabled from December was the possibility of issuing a notice of termination to this charter school because it is a school that is sponsored by a state board. A quick overview, Sovereign is a charter school in Oklahoma County and lists as its goal the admirable goal of education and training for the next leaders in indigenous communities in Oklahoma. So I understand it has a curriculum that's very geared toward getting into a kind of indigenous focus and has a lot of Native American students as a result, using the charter model to take advantage of the academic flexibility that they have. My initial estimates, my memorandum in your packets, were that they had about 115 students. From a site visit on Monday, I confirmed that they had 109 students on their roster across 5th through 12th grade. So when I start looking at a charter school, I think about it in terms of the purposes of the Charter School Act and how I approach it. So sample here that I think about some of the purposes from the Charter School Act include improving student learning, increasing learning opportunities, and encouraging the use of different and innovative teaching methods. Or as I put it in summary on the slide, I view it as looking at both academic and financial performance because I view a charter school as combining academic freedom with the financial requirements of a public school. And so the question I have when examining a charter school is what am I seeing on academics and what am I seeing on finance? And looking at Sovereign's charter, there is a performance framework that is attached to the end of it. And so one of my first questions was, what do we have as far as scoring for charter on that performance framework? This is included as a requirement for our charter. And so I've included their charter as exhibit 1 in your handout, so you can see both the terms of the charter and what the blank performance framework was. There are 3 sections to it, and so it assigns points in 3 different categories. The first being academic, the second being financial, and the third being organization. And now, since I didn't find the scoring in my files on that, I requested my staff assist me in preparing some tentative scoring based on the information we had and how we would score for each year of operation. So the tentative conclusion for the department is that Sovereign has failed all academic metrics and all financial metrics for every complete year of operation. And in addition, Sovereign has consistently met less than half of the organizational metrics for every year of operation. The department's tentative scores that I worked on are included as exhibit 2 in your handouts. So you can see precisely what were the questions in that framework and how I answered them to reach those conclusions. I want to dig into those 3 categories particularly so you can understand what I'm seeing in those categories. For academics, I thought that a good way to get the particulars on it would be to examine the OSTP scores, which assess schools across the state for grades 3 through 8. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Sovereign is 5th through 12th grade, which means 5th through 8th grade are the scores that will have available there if they don't have a 3rd or a 4th. There are 4 categories of achievement on OSTP. There's below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced. And so the way I examined was looking for the percentage of students in each grade and each subject that scored proficient or above. So I mean anyone that scored proficient or advanced on their test. So here's a quick snapshot for Sovereign for looking at fiscal year 21 and 22. I understand there are no test scores for 2020 because the pandemic happened then, but for 21 and 22, you can see for 5th grade, I'm looking at 11% proficiency and less than or equal to 1% for 21. You see English and language arts decreases and math increases for 22, but the numbers are all still quite low. I go to 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and you're seeing low numbers for these scores across both. I included some science numbers as well in your handout. I do English and math in my slides, but these are referenced just because those are across all 4 grades, whereas science is only in 5th and 8th grade. But the numbers, as you'll see in the packet, are similar on science testing as well. So then, seeing those scores, I wanted to do comparisons to see how those match up to the rest of the state. So this is a graph that was actually used in the December 2022 presentation that I wanted to reuse here, because I thought it gave a good example of what the statewide percentage for proficient or advanced looks like compared to how Sovereign is performing across all 3 subjects. Now, moving from statewide, though, I also have a question of how does that compare to other school districts? So I pulled some of the local school districts to compare their similar number for same year, same grade, so you can see their proficiency or advanced levels for essentially equivalent classes. I will note too that in your additional memorandum, I had pulled a subset of students accidentally instead of the district-wide numbers. So that's why you might be seeing different numbers in the memorandum versus the slide. The slide is the accurate one for full district-wide numbers. So check that. And as I was doing that, I pulled some additional districts for comparisons. You can see again, 3 more districts compared to Sovereign. And then I had the question of, well, how do they compare to charter schools, not just public school districts? Does that give a more favorable comparison? So here for your comparison are some of the charter schools in the Oklahoma City area and how their numbers compare to Sovereign for proficiency or advanced. Have Dove, Epic Blended, and Epic One-on-One. You see are all higher. I go to John Rex, Hippo DC, and Lamont, and all essentially higher as well. And indeed, when I move beyond 5th grade, I go to 6th grade for the same districts, for the same charter schools, and we're seeing the numbers. Sovereign is always the outlier again. Same for 7th. same for 8. But one school that, when I'm looking no matter public schools or charter schools, I see which one has the clear lowest.
Brian, quick
Yeah.
question. What are the, are you looking at these numbers? Because Sovereign's student body and class size is much smaller than these districts. And even the charter schools, how large is done?
I don't confess, I don't know off the top of my head how large they are.
Ms. Reynolds, you're looking at comparison of size.
Well, I'm just wondering about the sample size. I mean,
Right.
it's still an outlier regardless.
And we can ask those questions of Sovereign on their exact number. You remember, Brian, is it, how many students are enrolled in Sovereign?
Yeah, and I had 109 that they reported on the Monday site visit.
Right, and we're talking Epic, we're talking, depending on whether we're talking Epic, limited or one, we're talking tens of thousands of students, and then Gov, I don't know that off the top of my head, but significantly larger as well.
Okay.
Direct larger, not quite as big as some of the others, but big, all of those would be bigger, or independent bigger, kid bigger. That's helpful.
And you may get to this, if you'll excuse my question as well, the number of teachers, you mentioned the students, how many teachers at Sovereign?
Yeah, and so my understanding, and maybe you'll be precise with
Sure.
I think they're up to 3 now. I believe they declined 2 at their lowest point in the year, and they've recently hired another one, and they're actively recruiting for more. So I believe it's at 3 teachers right now.
I think they have.
Yeah, they can address that
Yeah.
number more after. And of course, we had the January 2023 site visit. I understand that after the December discussion, there was also discussion of having another site visit from the department to review some of the materials, the outstanding document requests, and some of the concerns that there might have been. And so I've included that in the 3 metrics here to kind of correspond to my 3 topic areas, and also gave you all a supplemental 2-page memorandum summarizing what the department saw at that visit. Essentially the visit started out with the request of documents that were still missing or information that was still desired from the December meeting. We saw what we were able to learn from the site visit. Positive signs in the academic side saw that the class structure had improved and that it was now where every class was no more than 2 grades to a class. I understand in the past that they had up to 4 grades in a single class, and so staff was impressed to see that they had reduced it just 2 grades per class for all classes. A good sign. Second one had the principal had explained that they're shifting their curriculum away from the online curriculum towards more in-person instruction, which the department also took as a positive sign for academics moving forward. Now I say that, and there were some concerning signs as well in their academics. We noted that there were only 69% attendance out of the 109 students when we visited on Monday. We weren't able to obtain attendance registers to confirm what their attendance has been, which a lot of the reports we've had from Sovereign have been of near perfect attendance. So we had some concerns about the accuracy, given the 69% attendance we saw, so we requested those registers. And then also we still have a request for transcripts showing that the seniors are on track to graduate, and we haven't received those transcripts yet. Finance. So you've seen what I'm seeing on the academic level. We're going to go into the financial. And they had audits from 2 years that both either in findings or in the management letter raised 3 areas of concern for the department. First would be lack of internal controls, which is, when you have a small staff, you just inevitably don't have segregated duties you need for finance. Second, there were problems with encumbrance and counting where they weren't properly tracking all of the expenses that they had encumbered, or things they essentially owed money to in order to have an accurate balance. And third, they did not have surety bonds for all of their staff, or as I saw in the flag in the report, may have also had surety bonds that didn't accurately describe person or job responsibilities to which they were assigned. The audits that I'm pulling these from are attached to Exhibit 3 in your handouts, and you can review them directly as well. In addition to what I saw across both audit reports, I noted 2 additional concerning items in the fiscal year 2021 project. They had flagged that future revenues are obligated to pay for current or past year obligations, which may be part of the fact that the encumbrances are not being properly tracked. And second, they also flagged that they thought Sovereign's financial position over several years may be caused in part by enrollment not meeting the projections of leadership. essentially that their budget always projects an enrollment number for students that they are not able to. The Sovereign's been addressing its shortfall in finances through a series of grants and loans. To the best that I was able to gather those numbers, they've taken out about $550,000 in debt across their 3.5 years of operation, and have used about $700,000 in one-time grants and donations. Pull a chart that was also your memorandum because I wanted to break out my own records and thought you might appreciate just seeing how exactly their finances break out by state aid, federal aid, grants or donations, loans, and some other revenue they had to give you a quick snapshot of the total numbers, and to see what work both the grants and the loans are doing for their actual finance. I would flag the asterisk, that's also noted in the memorandum on loans, they had a couple of loans that were forgiven in about $100,000 for each 2020 and 2021. And then what you're not seeing on this slide is another $100,000 in debt that was taken out just this past August, because these are reporting full years and we're in the middle of the fourth. I wanted to also just snapshot precisely the loans and the total as compared to carryover for next fiscal year. Because I wanted to highlight that the carryover they're having is significantly below the amount of money they're taking out in loans. And it's important to remember when you're looking at these numbers that the carryover I'm giving you is not adjusting for any encumbrances that they had to pay or paid for the next year's funds. So when fiscal year 2021 funds paid for an expense that was actually incurred in 2020 but not reported then, I'm not including that carryover right now. So those carryovers may actually overestimate the actual cash that they would have. So no, it doesn't include the $100,000 in debt. It doesn't include the adjustments for encumbrances. And as I was looking through the finance details and how they've ended up where they are, one that particularly concerned me was the fact that they haven't had reimbursement for their school lunches for most of their existence. So on digging into that, I found that they were actually eligible for reimbursement for school lunches throughout their existence, but just have only completed the reimbursement process for 2 months over 3.5 years of operation. So that's money they left on the table that's coming from their other revenue that they could have had from reimbursement if they had filled out the paper.
Which 2 months?
And I believe
Recent
that was
or recent?
last spring, if I recall.
Not recent.
Right. And so the January 2023 site visit again for finance, 2 positive reports from staff. First, there is a donation of $150,000, which that will go a long way towards helping their finances. You know, I flagged for you that I thought there was about $500,000 in debt that was unpaid. And so $150,000 doesn't cover all of that, but that is a helpful increase in their finances, additional revenue that I didn't know about by additional first memorandum. And second, staff also had compliments that Allison Black has a more organized filing system than her predecessors. And when they did the visit, they were impressed at her efforts to bring a lot of the paperwork and finances into a much better system. Unfortunately, there was still not sufficient documentation to verify the finances. And they have hired a part-time encumbrance clerk that I understand is full-time at a different charter school and does some part-time assistance at Sovereign. And they have an accountant that's on a consulting contract. But it seems from the impression that I have that they don't have a full-time staffer that really knows school finance. That might be part of the problem why they don't have full documentation they need. I noted also there's no treasurer's reconciliation report that would show all the checks that are outstanding, so that could be accurately tracked. And then also the encumbrance register appeared that it still had some inaccuracies. First, because there was a couple of details like some upcoming utility and insurance payments that weren't listed on the register. And second, because the debt was not actually encumbered on the register. And in fact, I believe their loan from the Chickasaw Community Bank, if I recall correctly, is the one that has the unpaid interest accruing to its side, which means their debt, at least one of them, is increasing right now. So that's what I've seen on finance. On organization, I would note that over 3.5 years, their leadership has changed 5 times. The current board president has been on the board since early 2021, and has been president since March of last year, and the current head of school assumed the position just last month. I know the teaching staff frequently changes. The numbers I've seen, and obviously we can ask for more accurate ones there to the extent that can be corrected by Sovereign. The records I had seem to reflect about 5 teachers for about 115 students at the start of the year. I thought at their lowest point, they were about 2. And my rough understanding now is that they've hired an additional one, we're up to 3. Of course, they can let me know if I have the number, not quite precise on that. And of course, the lack of teaching staff is contributing to deficiencies in special education. CAD flags that they're not giving direct instruction to all of their special education students, and they're missing data for almost half of their individualized education plans. But I candidly wasn't surprised by that just because of the lack of teaching staff they have. It seems to follow that they would have those deficiencies. In the site visit, saw some improvements that they now have employment contracts for all their staff, and also had to note that there was a new teacher that we saw hired in the employment contracts. But for needs work, saw that some of those contracts were still incomplete, were not approved by their board. They still hadn't submitted the accurate personnel data to the department, which is why I'm hedging on the teacher numbers, because I just don't have that accurate personnel data. There was no records from their December or January board meetings for us to review. They didn't have the documents for their bus driver certification. And it seemed like the number of classes, which there were 5 classes, there was 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th, 9th and 10th, 11th and 12th, and a high school elective. It seemed that the 5th grade, the 5 classes they had exceeded the number of teachers that they have on staff. So I've given you my perspective on those 3 categories. I wanted to give you just a brief summary and scene of what's the history of Sovereign's interaction with this board. I pulled this slide again from the December one because I like the picture showing that the entire discussion of Western Heights by this board actually started after and ended before this board has resolved its consideration of the Sovereign issue. So I thought it was a useful picture to remind you of in the December meeting. To get to the particulars, November 2018 is when this board agreed to sponsor Sovereign after Oklahoma City Public Schools declined to sponsor them. So the charter began in July 1st, 2019 for 5 years. By May and June of 2020, there was already some reports of financial difficulty at Sovereign. And by November of 2020, its 2nd year in operation, this board imposed probation terms that are still effective to this date. About 6 months after this board imposed those terms, the department expressed concern that Sovereign was not complying with probation and recommended termination. The board instead voted to have them present a 5-year plan and to work on improvement and coming into compliance with probation. And so, we're about a year and a half into that 5-year plan at this point, although the leadership has changed since then too. October of 2021 and March, April of 2022, the department again expressed concern to the board that they didn't see compliance with the terms of probation. And you have both the department's reports and Sovereign's responses in your handouts in Exhibit 4 and 5. So then we arrive at December 2022, where the department again, after expressing a series of concerns, again renews its recommendation that since April 2021, still haven't seen it come into compliance with the terms of probation and recommend termination. And so that's the recommendation for you today. So your options, as I see it, are that you can vote to issue the notice of termination, which cannot be effective any earlier than 90 days from a vote. And practically, I would recommend that you don't notice termination before the end of a school year, just to make sure that you're not ending it on the students before the school year is out. You also have the option to do further information or further requirements of Sovereign, or of course can always table the discussion again, should you so choose. I laid out at the end of your memorandums what I view as sort of the 3 key violations of either the Charter School Act or Sovereign's Charter. There's obviously some overlap between those 2. And so the board is able to cite any or all of those should it choose to issue a notice of termination. Those are the details I have. I'm happy to answer any questions or to yield to a presentation.
So what is your recommendation, Brian, specifically?
From the, both dismal academic performance and financial performance I'm seeing over several years, I would recommend issuing a notice of termination.
You said Sovereign this year?
Yes.
Do you just mind before you just introduce who you?
Sure, sure. And actually, we did bring slides. We would love the opportunity to be able to present this as well.
Absolutely.
I believe someone was given.
Yes. I think it's back there.
While those are coming up, good morning, everyone. My name is Kendra Wilson Clements, and I am the current board president for Sovereign Community School. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity to come and kind of give the other side of the state's presentation today. I appreciate he's already provided past history of what has happened at Sovereign Community School, and I agree with much of the detail and some of the information that you saw, but also we'll be presenting more information to kind of show some differences that we seem to continue to have with the state's reporting. So thank you again for allowing us to talk. I still don't see slides popped up. It is important to know, and maybe I just kind of go into a personal background because it is going to paint a picture about what I'm doing here and what I hope to continue to do here. Should the board allow us to continue, which is what I am requesting. Just background on me, two things. From a professional perspective, I own a local management consulting firm here in Oklahoma called We the People. I'm a business consultant. I specialize in turnarounds, and I worked for a private equity firm for a few years, about 6 of those years. Mergers, acquisitions, turning companies around, restructuring organizations. And so Sovereign Community School is kind of right up my professional alley in terms of restructuring and turning around, which is what I believe I will be able to show as soon as these slides are popped up. Just the level of turnaround that we've gone through since March, me stepping in as president to present, and then even more into the future. So kind of showing you all some sustainability plans. Yes.
Yeah, Kendra, will you have hard copies of these slides for us to? Not yet.
I am not certain. It looks like maybe there's an answer there.
Is that this package?
Even better.
And I'm sorry, Jeremy stepped out. We're bringing him right back to get your slides up, so I do apologize for that.
No worries.
I've got them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So you can follow along and we'll get these pop up on screen soon. Again, professional background, mergers, acquisitions, turnarounds, restructuring. This is what I do for a living. And so Sovereign Community School, I am treating this very much as I would a client with what I do on a daily basis, which is figure out how to turn organizations around, organizations who are hemorrhaging, organizations who are bleeding out, organizations who are not structured well, organizations who do not have internal policies, processes, procedures, zero systems, staffing, infrastructure, on and on and on. All of the things that the state has presented in terms of here's what's happened. These are the things that I do on a professional level. Personally, just being a part of the founding journey of Sovereign Community School. And so I was around when Sovereign was an idea, a thought, a hope, and got to participate in some of the community building pieces around creating Sovereign Community School and the model that we have. Somehow, some way, I got, I jokingly say I was tricked into teaching year one. And so what I did was I put my consulting, my CEO hat, I've got a tremendous staff, put my consulting firm on hold for a year, stepped into the classroom and taught kids year one. And so I received the kids from the public school system. I taught 6th grade and 9th grade because year one, that is all that we had. We opened up with 6th and 9th, and I taught them health and wellness, which just drew me closer and closer to Sovereign Community School, our community, our students, and education all in all. I am education in my veins. I come from a long line of educators. My great-great-grandfathers were the original founding members of the Department of Education for the Choctaw Nation. I am Choctaw. And so said I was never going to teach, wasn't going to teach. I lied. I did. And I fell in love with it, which is why I'm still here. So today, fast forward, I was stepped onto the board in 2021, in around December 2021. And then a few months later was elected as president of the board, March of 2022. So 10, 11 months, relatively new-ish, in a position where I had full access as a president of the board and with a business consulting background and level of experience. I went to work immediately. I I dug into the details, I dug into the financials, I dug into the people who were in the positions that we had hired, and it doesn't look the same. Meaning, this is a turnaround. I started pinpointing very quickly, like breadcrumbs, where is the hemorrhaging coming from? One source, found the source, removed the source. Next, more breadcrumbs. Where is the next level of hemorrhaging coming from? Went to that source. That source is no longer here. Next, where are our financials? What is the story here? I don't believe what was being reported. I didn't. And we did not have the talent, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the people in place to tell me an accurate picture. But because I do what I do for a living, I knew it wasn't right. I knew the numbers weren't right. I knew the operations weren't right. I knew we weren't in compliance. I knew all of these things. And so I took people to task, and they are no longer here. So what we're doing today, essentially, is we're doing about 3.5 years of cleanup. And it is not impossible. The work that we've done, Allison, I'll allow her to introduce herself in a moment, our new head of school, she stepped on board December 12th. I think in between holiday break, and she had 1 week out with the flu. I think maybe she's seen a total of 3 weeks in teaching and being here on site and doing the work. We've hired a lot of new teachers. We're going to talk about that too. The state, you do have a few numbers that are different than ours in terms of who we've hired to be sitting in the seats now. What I'm saying is that yes, the things you saw, horrible, unacceptable, unbelievable, but not to the level of where we need to close these doors. $150,000 donation, which came in, I made a commitment to the board in December that I would fund the gap, my firm. So that $150,000 donation that you see came from me, came from my firm. I am a smart businesswoman, not going to write a check to something that I think is going to fail. I'm prepared to also continue to fund the gap as soon as we get an accurate 100% believable financial report. I think we're about 99.9% there, which is what will be presented today. Willing to fund that gap as well. My estimation, I don't know necessarily that we're going to have to come out of a check that large of a number because of what we've got going with our relationships, our partnerships. Our relations are involved. Organizations are involved. We've got grant partners that are looking at us, and we're having serious conversations with them as well. We've got great things going. So with the last board, I would ask this board as well, let me do my job. Let me finish the progress that we've started. And you'll see it today. I see that we've got slides here.
And may I
Please.
converse with you a little bit
Please,
here?
please. I'm going to drink the water.
Do it, and I'll probably drink alongside you. I really do appreciate your passion. I understand the turnaround business model. As a new board member, one thing that you can understand that I struggle with is that I see these kind of warnings appear to have been sent to Sovereign as far back as 2020. And so I'm sure at that time there was hope that they would be remedied. You are new, and so you're both relatively new. And so that, and seeing that changeover, it's also a thing of, we have new people, now it's going to be fixed. And I'm sure that was conveyed before. I don't know specifically, but I'm going to assume that that was conveyed before. So that's going to be the struggle that I go through to say, man, I love your passion. I hear what you're wanting to do, but it seems as though these warnings have been given before and they haven't fixed the problem. Your new people, it's like, no, but we're going to fix it. So I'm wanting you to convince me, and I appreciate this conversation today. It's because it's important, and I know I see already your passion. It's not just the words you're using, it's the dollars you've invested, and I love that you've got that turnaround experience. So I'm very, curious to hear more, but I just wanted to, I wanted you to know some of the issues that I know I will be struggling with to try to come to the right answer.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that and certainly recognize that that is a concern and more than anything, it's a doubt. What I can say is that, and I said this in our previous board meeting in December, from the beginning, Sovereign Community School was not set up properly. We had no business, honestly, operating or starting up school. We had no business opening up our doors. We were not funded properly. We didn't have enough money in the bank. Aside from not having enough money in the bank, we did not have the right leadership in place. We didn't. Person running the school, to the people inside the school, running the operations, doing the day-to-day, they had zero experience in the business of school, none at all. As a matter of fact, our business operations person came from retail, totally different. One has nothing to do with the other. She did the best she could with the skill set that she had, but it wasn't enough.
And your turnaround industries, what industries have you accomplished this or worked with?
Education, manufacturing, aerospace and defense, oh my gosh, technology.
Okay, quite a breadth.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Burdick, I can tell you that, the private equity firm she's referencing is Great Eagles, Acorn Growth.
Oh, you've been involved with Acorn?
He was my business partner. I was a partner in that firm.
And anyway, Nagel.
Tells me a lot. Thank you.
All to say, it wasn't enough. We didn't have the right people in the places. We didn't have the right funding. We did not have internal structure. We were not thoughtful about any of the foundational pieces before opening our doors. We were so excited about having a school and getting the charter approved because we had been denied year to year to year to year. And I think everyone in their excitement, just let's open the doors. Wrong thing to do. We did not serve our students or our communities well in making that decision. And I recognize that. What I can say also, in kind of breadcrumbing and finding different pieces, connecting dots, that is a part of this turnaround process. And it started in summer with our business operations person, removing her from that position. And then on to the next, our superintendent, back in November, removing that person, bringing in Allison Black, who has exactly what we need and has already shown in a very short amount of time. Major changes right now, and also the plans that she has moving forward are quite impressive, and I'll certainly get to those. So we've kind of introduced ourselves here. Just a little bit about kind of our story. Why did we form? Why Sovereign Community School? At the time, it was Oklahoma City Public School System reported 58% graduation rate, which is the lowest rate of any demographic. And so our kids, that 58% of our kids in Oklahoma City Public School Systems were graduating. That was unacceptable, right? So that was one of our motivating factors for going to build a school so that we could better serve them, smaller population. Bullying. We had a lot of our native youth who were bullied, long hair, mental health, substance abuse, representation in the classroom. Representation is important. Our young ones need to see themselves in the classroom, and create Sovereign Community School ensured that they would be able to do that. Just a little snapshot of our building. So we occupy the old Seaworth Academy. And so for those of you that may be familiar, gorgeous campus, huge campus, about 40 acres, which allows us to do things like, have class outdoors, get, creative with our, the way in which we have curriculum. Yes.
What's the monthly spend on that building?
So in total, we're spending about $67,000 a year, school year, for rent, which is inclusive of the insurance as well. So breaking that down into 12. Sorry. There it is. And please note also, monthly spend on this property, I am actively in conversations with a colleague who is looking to purchase this building as well. So that will remove considerable debt from us. So again, just a timeline. This is what it looks like. The 12th of December, Allison Black started. On the 15th is when we were here last, the state school board meeting, where the previous board agreed to table, which is why we're here today. 19th through 23rd was holiday break for our students, our school. Allison and I did have very frequent working days during the holiday break though, however, to continue for her to wrap her arms around school and also to prepare for our meeting here today. Our January timeline looks wild because it was. January is a wild month. And we have had considerable teachers who have dropped off and have resigned. On the 1st of January, our 7th and 8th grade teacher resigned. On the 2nd, that following day, we had our very first teacher professional development day of the entire school year. Let that sink in just a little bit. Our previous superintendent had not met with our teachers one time in a formal way to help instruct them, to help teach them, to provide professional development. There was zero investment in our teachers. And oh, by the way, the teachers that were on staff at the time were not certified. These were people who were coming out of college year one, did not have a teaching background. They came to teach at Sovereign. Painting a picture here. That superintendent is no longer there. 5th, on the January the 5th, 5th and 6th grade teacher resigns. It's part of turnaround too. This is what happens. Accountability. The people who are not meant for the positions, they will not stay. They can't. They can't meet the standards that we're moving toward, and that is okay because we replace them with certified teachers. January the 9th and the 13th, our head of school was out due to illness. On the 13th, our math and bus driver resigned, giving us 24-hour notice. Our only bus driver too on this note. On the 12th, we were invited to, which is a high honor, to give a presentation to the 5 civilized tribes at the Intertribal Council. Allison and I went up to Tulsa and spent a considerable amount of time talking with tribal leaders in that 5 civilized tribes organization about Sovereign Community School. Outside of that has come an incredible amount of interest, hands raised. I want to help. What kind of check can I write?
Okay, you think financial support may come from this?
Absolutely, 100%. We're already in discussions with 3 of them, going through how and the amounts and etc. That will be on my slide too soon. The 16th, it was Martin Luther King Day. We were out. 18th through 19th was an in-person work days with our treasurer. We didn't have a treasurer before. We just now hired this month a treasurer. We just now hired this month an encumbrance clerk. Our encumbrance clerk resigned the day that our superintendent resigned as well. So we have been operating without an encumbrance clerk, which can address some of the differences and or gaps in the encumbrance reporting, which we now have. We've adjusted those to reflect something accurate. I did not get my first financial report until Sunday night. So that was the very first financial report that I actually trust and believe, and that came in on Sunday night. On the 23rd, that is when Oklahoma State Department of Education came out on site and met with Allison, gathered information and data. We would have loved to have had that meeting take place earlier, but just having met with our new treasurer on the 18th and 19th, the previous team could do that turnaround on a financial report. Was Monday. I kind of talked through this, but here it is in a visual format. My assessment for 2019 to 2022 are all of the things that I said. We were underfunded, we were understaffed, we were under-resourced. There was an absence of fundraising or sustainability planning. We didn't have one. We weren't even thinking about fundraising. We weren't even thinking about sustainability, which is mind-blowing. There was an absence of infrastructure. I talked about that. Process, policies, procedures, systems, compliance. I think you can disagree that we had all of those things missing. And then lastly, yes, high board and staff turnover. And so to your point again, what's different? What's different is that, speaking for myself, I have a professional background. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. And in doing that as well, I'm hiring people who also know what they're doing. They have the experience, the know-how, the relationships. I know who this is. I know who these people are. And the hiring criteria is really high. We had one before. It's really high. So that's the difference. So providing solutions, actions, priorities, kind of first order as of January 22nd, I mentioned we've got an accurate financial report that reveals our reality. And it allows us to target funding requirements. We currently have an aggressive fundraising and sustainability plans. They are in progress. Staffing, hired new head of school, onboarded an encumbrance clerk and a treasurer just a couple of weeks ago. Stabilizing and expanding our current board. It is very important to note that the people that we owe money to, Chickasaw Community Bank, the vice president of that bank is joining our board of directors starting next month. We will be approving that. We'll talk a little bit about both of those loans because we do have two outstanding. So it's some different, kind of some updated information for the state to consider today. And then lastly, we were onboarded 2 certified teachers this week, and then a third is in process. So also a difference in some of the information that was reported by the state. Again, I want to emphasize these teachers are certified. They know what they're doing. Well, we didn't have those. Financial update. And we're all biting the bit for this. Me too. So what you have in front of you, if you notice in red, I did make these 2 a.m. adjustments as I was receiving information kind of coming through the doors. But what you have in front of you is in black. On December 30th, and I discussed that, my firm made an unrestricted donation in the amount of $150,000. I'll state for the record again, I'm certainly more than willing and able to fund the gap at the end of the school year as well, should we have one. If we do nothing at all, which we're not here to do nothing at all, we're on a very aggressive path of doing a whole lot of things in a short amount of time. We could be looking at a $395,316.88 deficit. Here are the updates. The updates are twofold. As of yesterday, we were given a verbal agreement by Santa Fe South, who we have an outstanding debt with loan in the amount of $191,500, and with Chickasaw Community Bank in the amount of $248,572.67. We have agreements with both of those organizations to rework our loans and to extend those. We are not on the hook for those at this moment. Both organizations and leadership have stated that they are more than happy to put something in writing. And we are also very happy to provide to the board the new reworked agreements.
And so there's am I to interpret this, there's some loan forgiveness that is being negotiated?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yes, there is. I don't have those details just yet.
Sure.
Give me a minute.
You got it.
I'll get that to you. Additionally, what we've noticed just in the last couple of days, we found a lot of waste in our spending. And so I love cutting through financials, really looking at what wasteful spending looks like. And we found a lot. I wish we could have found more, and I'm pretty sure we still can if I continue charging at that and it will. But as it stands now, we have found about $5,000 a month in wasteful spending. That's gonna equate to, you know, a big number, right? And then additional 20, that's gonna add an additional 20,000 to the budget by end of year, right? So in school year, we should pick up 20,000. This is an addition, and this is not reflected on the financial statements that you see now. And then last, I'm gonna let Allison talk through that, and she will get to that as child nutrition and how we're gonna pick up some potential dollars there as well. So what we're doing, grants and grant partnerships are in progress. We've not been writing grants. And I say that we have not written for grants. We are doing that now. We are have actually been in touch with a couple of organizations who are wanting to partner with us on grants that I believe are going to be worth the weight in gold. Secondly, I mentioned tribal partnerships and investments. This is a really critical piece because this is a sustainability plan. That first point is the goal is to secure 7 tribal nation donations by June 1st. I say 7, that is, in my opinion, a conservative amount, but I don't want to over-promise. We have 1 tribal donation that is in progress. It would be great if we got to the school campus, opened the mail, and the check was there because we have been told that it's in the mail. I do not know the amount of that, but we'll be reporting that forward. 3 substantial tribal nation donation discussions are also in progress with arguably the largest tribes in the state of Oklahoma, meaning they've got deep pockets and can write big checks.
Hold you for a second.
Please.
So in Brian's report, he said here that it's number 34, that grants and donations, it looks like there was a little over $800,000. Was that all donations? Or is that incorrect?
No, no, we did not have $800,000 in donations. We were a part of it. It's something Allison will talk about as well. A new charter school grant.
So you have gotten grants and you've been writing grants at some point, right?
I think the found
Right.
implementation.
Okay.
But since that, we've not written any grants at all. I can't answer that with confidence. Thank you for that question. The last bullet, exploring larger tribal initiatives. Again, those are sustainability planning. We're planning to launch that in March. So we'll have more information on how our tribes are going to help in this process. Because after all, we are educating the future leaders. Community fundraising activities, I'm estimating about $10,000. We do have some fundraisers coming up and are in the works that we're planning. Oklahoma City Community Foundation, so kind of in addition to that $150,000 check that we wrote for Sovereign, my firm also wrote a $25,000 check to Oklahoma City Community Foundation to set up an endowment for Sovereign Community School. That endowment, Kirkpatrick's matched that. And then from there, Oklahoma City Community Foundation will manage that process. It opens us up to considerable funding, charitable donations and funding. So we are looking forward to good performance and reception on Oklahoma City Community Foundation. And then the last point, 2 major donor commitments to fund the gap at the end of June. One of 2 is my firm. And then I mentioned I've got ongoing discussions with a major donor for possible purchase of the school property, so that we can kind of get that monkey off our back in terms of our rent payment and the insurance as well. That's it. I want to pause and questions for financial stuff before I exit and turn this over to an expert.
Where would you go if you sell the property? Would you stay there?
Oh, we would stay there. We would stay there and rent at a considerably low rate.
You're clearly passionate, you're putting your money where your mouth is with your personal investments, and I would imagine that passion is contagious. Have you hopes, and you've mentioned tribal support. Do you see other businessmen and women joining you in this as well?
Thank you for asking that, and I can kick myself right now for not mentioning corporate donors.
Okay.
I did. Thank you. Yes, we do have corporate donors that I have been in contact with. I mean, these are people I do business with every day too. You know, to answer maybe a question that some of you might have, maybe you don't. Or maybe when I say it, you're like, yeah, what about that? You know, why have we not done this since March, since I stepped in as a president? I put my head down. I needed to know exactly what was going on, where it came from, and if I personally felt invested or felt that I could or should write a check, and or could or should introduce Sovereign Community School to my own partners, corporate, tribal, alike. This is personal capital I have. My grandmother had always told me, you have one reputation, you don't get another one. And so I wasn't about to put Sovereign Community School or something that was going to harm my own professional path and relationships if it wasn't feasible, if it wasn't workable. I was not going to do that. And so I've been very cautious until now.
You've had a lot of due diligence to do to get comfortable.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Other questions before I pass this over to Allison?
Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for allowing us to be here again today, and we feel more prepared for this meeting. And I'm in agreement with Kendra whenever I look at those the report from previous academic numbers. That sinks my heart. I'm a mother of 4 of my own. I have a son who is in the Army, who's entering Arc Ranger training right now, who entered with an associate's degree. My oldest daughter is graduating from OSU. And I have another high schooler who's graduating from high school as well. So to see those numbers, and I'm a 3rd grader who's in the midst of a huge reading challenge in his own school. So to see those numbers, it's really heartbreaking. And so starting on December 12th, we walked in and we say I committed my family to this. My husband is the principal at the school. So we came in as a team, we conquered and divided. And right out the gate, our experience working in schools, he's been a tribal youth director for over 10 years. We worked with Frontier Public Schools. When I say we worked, I was a Title VI director of Indian Education for Frontier Public Schools for a few years. We served on the parent committee together, and his program and my program within Frontier, we served the students there, the entire population, really, with innovative programming and activities. And Frontier has a 100% native student graduation percentage. And so we know how to do that. And whenever we were asked to look at Sovereign and consider it, we came in with that mentality. That's what we want for these native students. And not only that, but to be college and career ready. That's really important for our future tribal leaders, is to be college and career ready. So we took that challenge on, but when we walked in December 12th, we were immediately, I understand those numbers, immediately. We had 9th through 12th grade sitting in one room with their laptops on. I am coming from EPIC, so I understand what online learning is with the blended learning and one-on-one. My daughter does one-on-one with EPIC, so she's at home and she's communicating with her teacher, knows how to use her technology. We have teacher-parent meetings, things like that. You have to be really, really skilled. The students have to be really, really skilled. The teacher has to be really, really skilled in technology for that model to work. 50 kids in a classroom with their laptops on doesn't work. So we knew that immediately. We also came into just no structure, for a lack of a better word. And as you can imagine, my husband is a veteran of the Army, US Army, and his family is, military background, and our oldest is, of course, in the Army, so we were ready to get the structure back into place. Can't have, learning when there's not structure, there's not safety. So those are the things that we began addressing right away to make a safe learning environment. And that's just foundational work in the first week. So then we started looking at the reasons why our proficiencies were so low, where we came to find that they haven't even done assessments since at least the spring of 2021. They hadn't even paid their contract to do assessment testing with NWEA last fall. We had to go and get that paid for. So as you can imagine, that has been our primary focus as we come back into the spring semester. We found out they hadn't had one professional development day just this year. I couldn't tell you the spring or fall previous year if they did or not. So right out the gate, we had our first staffing the first day I was there. And when we returned on January 2nd, we had a full day. Just from listening to our teachers and our families, we understood that our teachers didn't know much about SPED. But I do have an update about our SPED. I have a copy of our report as well. So we're just doing common sense foundational work in these last few weeks, and we got right on SPED training for our teachers, teaching them how to use our technology within our school, better utilizing Accelis instead of just relying on the students to look at it and do it themselves. We hope to phase that out completely and go to lectures and innovative learning in the classroom aside from using a Chromebook. But we're making the best of Accelis right now. And coming from Epic, I have that experience. Everybody learning from the online learning online platform as a group, and then the specialized groups and then individual attention. So we're trying to use Accelis in the best way that we possibly can. My slides. My enrollment numbers are a little bit different. This was as of yesterday. But I wanted to address our organizational status this week. We have certified teachers, and I understand under charters we don't have to have certified teachers, but we definitely know that helps. So we have hired a certified science teacher. We now have a math teacher that's certified. The math teacher's contract wasn't in that packet, and that was my mistake. And we are in the process of hiring another certified teacher for 5th and 6th grade. We do have 5th and 6th grade together, but again, we're going to utilize that Accelis model, that online learning model that I just discussed, in addition to putting a teacher's aide that we will train to work with the teacher in delivering that component or that learning style. And right now we are in the process of hiring a certified English teacher as well. So we're being really aggressive about this, not just making do with what we have, but also bringing in the people that know how to do it as well. Our bus driver, as you know, resigned the week that I had the flu. And so he gave us a 24-hour notice. We have a part-time bus driver that just does the student transportation for us right now. We have a new teacher's aide that has committed to, and we are going to be training her and helping her to obtain her CDL, so we'll have that backup driver. And another buffer for that is we have 2 staff that are committed to obtaining their CDL by the fall of 2023. And that includes our principal as well. And additional resources to help all of that is we contracted a school counselor. We have a substitute teacher, and then I'm developing a volunteer program because we have our community that comes in and says, what can we do? Where do you want me? And so show me you're going to help, I'm going to use you. So that's in the process of opening. I hope to have that developed in the next week or so, so that we're not just relying on the teachers to clean up the outside, to do hall duty or just those things that our community can do. And some of the deficiencies we've kind of talked about, and I just wanted to list those. And those are very broad, but deficiencies so far. And these are just some of the few things that we have been doing to address those deficiencies in just these few weeks. As far as opportunities go, we are applying for Title VI from the Office of Indian Education. And with this grant, the beauty of it is you can use it to increase academic achievement and provide college and career readiness. And that is our goal for the grant. And of course, we have to get family input for that. But I think if they look at our numbers and they see our need, I think they'll be in agreement with us. We are partnered with the National Indian Education Association and our Whole Child Initiative to go after the New Schools Grant. And we look at this initiative as something that helps our students with self-advocacy and health, wellness, and things like that. And I say all of that to go back to the school culture. Just to be honest, coming and seeing our students, ready to learn, but it not being a safe and conducive environment for that, we're changing a school culture of just being there and being in survival mode and just be there, hang out, to ready to learn, safe to learn, being college and career readiness ready, and feeling proud of their school. So that's what we're doing, and that's why I wanted to list the opportunities that we were working on to do that.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
So safe to learn, how are the students not feeling safe? What was involved there?
Well, I mean, it was the large classroom sizes.
Okay.
We had, instances where, sometimes the bathroom situation as well. I mean, they were, not enough people to keep an eye on this in areas. So that's what I mean by safe. So.
Okay.
And so back to the school culture, again, knowing that we hadn't done any assessment testing, that's our goal. I have some sprints for you that I'm going to share, but getting just to see where our students are. And with our new teacher hires and us being with the students, we already understand we're behind. Let's just be honest. And so the first thing that we want to do is reestablish that benchmarking. And if NWEA math isn't enough, then we'll consider other testing. My kids have grown up with STAR and AR in their school districts. I mean, we will explore it all. So that's our, what we need to reestablish, and we are working on now that we're almost comfortable in staffing. And then we built in an academic intervention class for our students as well, for those that are below 60%, and then helping them get ready for those tests that we are going to be taking. And so we will target those areas in that academic intervention class as well. And I kind of wanted to talk about our tiered level intervention. And again,
I just want to say, and we did tell you guys we would allot 20 minutes for a presentation. We're over 40 minutes now. So if we can just,
okay.
I appreciate the thoroughness here, but just want to remind you, we're being very lenient here because again, you guys have brought us a lot of information here, but if we could just.
Totally understand. Okay, and then this is in your packet as well, some of the partnerships and support that we do have. We are being ready to implement a STEM after school program. But long term, we are working on the areas of academic efficiency and behavior through a tiered level intervention that will tell us if this is working or if it's not, and who needs to be where and who needs to be assessed. So right now, this is just a model for you. And in my 10-day sprint, we will have all of this stuff in red figured out. What are those expectations of all of those different groups? So that's our long-term plan, beginning of a long-term plan actually, in those areas. My 10-day sprints are included. I've got a test, and this was the week we had planned to do it, but now we're out on snow days. Yes. Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
well, I was on attendance. Is it the goal to have 100% attendance in person, or are you going to continue the online for a certain percentage of students? What's the?
All of our students are in person. We don't have any online. Our curriculum that we're talking about is online that we use in person. But yes, we are shooting for 100% attendance for sure. So these are my 10-day sprints. Our 30-day sprints, I'm not even finished completing this list, based on everything that we're learning that we need. But here are our 30-day sprints. I want to add more to them as well. We do have a short-term recruitment plan, and then we are developing something more robust, more descriptive, that will bring us in the student leaders, students that we need. And evaluate. In closing, I would like to say that everybody that has stepped into our building since their initial visits have all said, and that includes families, that includes other teachers, our foundation. This is the first time it's felt like a little school. So I just like to emphasize that.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt before you move on. Earlier, you currently have 6 seniors.
Yes.
And they're on track to graduate.
We are working on that right now. We are, just kind of behind on that, and that's why we can produce those official transcripts.
Are they meeting proficiency standards?
I couldn't tell you that number right now, but I can tell you by Monday for sure.
And we're good to enter into any discussion questions at this point. For you about that question. I do have a question on the financial side of things. So when you're talking about potential commitments from folks and things like that, do we have anything in writing, or are these still in the verbal stages of when you talked about Santa Fe South, you talked about, I can't remember the other one, Oklahoma City Foundation, are those just conversations at this point? Is there anything in writing there?
Yeah, so Santa Fe South, we just had that conversation at like 5:30 p.m. Santa Fe South and Chickasaw Community Bank both. We will be developing new agreements within the next week. And I'm happy to provide the board an update with those agreements, yes.
So at this point, we can have a discussion, and then we could have a motion for potential action, right?
Correct.
Comments, discussion from the board?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. So, legal question, if the charter is terminated, who pays off the debt?
Not the sponsor. So you are in a gray area, but what the Charter School Act says is that it's not a debt of the sponsor, and it's also not a debt of the state. So
What is, so Santa Fe South is the debtor. So what form is that? Is there any type of collateral or consideration? Is there anything?
Yes, I'll give that for a shot. My name is Bill Hickman. I'm an education attorney here in the state of Oklahoma. I've been practicing education law with others for nearly 20 years. Some of y'all I know, some of y'all I don't know. In my education practice, I represent brick and mortar charter schools, virtual charter schools, traditional public schools, superintendents who get crossways with their boards of education, as well as, most importantly to my heart, children or students who have been either special needs kids or kids have been bullied. So I'm blessed, and I've been able to represent lots of people in the education area, and to be a part of opening 8 schools and closing 2 schools. And so I feel like I have a pretty well-rounded experience. With regard to your specific question, board member, generally speaking, boards of charter schools are nonprofit organizations, so they're different from traditional board of education of traditional schools, if you will. And if they do not have the money to pay debts, if they have debts or whatever liability those might be, they close down shop and they file bankruptcy essentially. They not formally file bankruptcy and go through the process of dissolution of the organization. And so the individuals or entities that are owed money from them get whatever pennies on the dollar that might be available, and the rest is a write-off for them if you will, or loss.
But specifically on the Santa Fe South loan, they're not a bank, so how was that memorialized?
I was not involved in that transaction, so I don't know the details of that arrangement.
Okay. So, yeah, Kendra, I appreciate your time, last week and again yesterday, talking through this. I don't know if you guys have any questions, but just generally speaking, it's kind of a little bit of a history lesson. We've been doing this a long time. We've seen lots of new leaders come and go. My personal opinion, this is the best they've ever had by a long shot. They actually, for the first time, told us something's going to happen in December. For the first time ever, it actually happened. And that was the check that was written by Tim's firm. But the bottom line is, is this a going concern? Is their fiscal house in order? Been there for almost a year now. And there's only 100 or so kids. Not all of them are regularly showing up for attendance, and I'm sure of those that are showing up. Normally, you guys will get to this point before a board meeting, you'll get inundated with phone calls by people on both sides of whatever issue we're about to discuss. Our emails are public, they're pretty easy to find. As you know, people like writing about us. So you're always going to get phone calls about this. The biggest thing to me are two, and this is just how I think about this. So Joy was running for governor last semester. It's pretty well known that her supporters included some of the tribes. She was one of the loudest proponents to cancel sovereign. What was really clear to me coming into last month and today's board meeting regarding sovereign was the lack of phone calls I received about this. Do I think, given another 3 years, that it could be turned around with this leadership, assuming they have I haven't even been on the board 2 years, I'm already questioning my it's a lot of work. And so, the thing is that if we initiated termination proceedings today, it's a 90-day process, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so how is that, can we make that 120 days?
Right, my recommendation was actually end of the school year.
Okay. So, and if something starts, if we keep seeing these material changes moving forward, which I think we probably will, then, we can always undo that action and let them try again for another year. But at some point, it's just like, when's enough? This presentation and discussion has been over an hour, I think, at this point. I'm not getting compensated for sitting here, neither are you. And that's an hour that I'll never get back, but I would like to have one day, I'm sure. So, my recommendation, and I'm open for further discussion, would be to initiate that recommendation of Mr. Cleveland to initiate termination proceedings. Exactly where that, not 90 days, but in the year time frame.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
We can get to that, but also, I want to keep hearing how things are going, and if things continue to materially improve, then you guys would be open to putting it back on the agenda at a later date to maybe give it one final update, to really give it every chance to succeed. But at some point, the reputation of the department and this board starts to come into questions like, well, are they only giving incredible leniency to the school because it is a charter, when they haven't passed that this type of leniency for public schools, and we are setting a precedent for whatever our actions are today, and be consistent and reasonable and logical. And I don't think anything that I just said is counter to that thought process. So happy to talk about it. We don't get to meet privately, so we have to talk like this. So I'm happy to answer any questions or whatever.
if I could make one point on the legal issue, and I want to make sure that we're understanding the consequences. My view is, if you issue the notice of termination and no request for an informal proceeding is made, it's not as if there is another time to come back and undo this. So you are starting the process. Now, If they request the informal hearing, you could reverse course at that point. But I want to make sure that we're all clear on the law and how this process works.
Yeah, but it's not final until it's final. I mean, like you said, we could have another, I mean, this becomes permanent until it's not. I mean, right?
No further board action would be needed. I see the question you're asking is, though, could before the termination date, you decide to reverse course, and I don't know that I have a fully formed opinion on that. I think it'd be likely that there would be a request for an informal hearing made, and that would really be your opportunity to reverse course if you so choose.
If I could just interject real quick, the way this has worked in the past is if you take this vote today, which we're honestly hoping to release right until next month, because the school is trending in the right direction, and I respect the time of all the board members being here. If you take this vote today, essentially a closing transition team will be formed, the final audit will be required, and the process will start to shut the school down and to close it down, and the work of trying to secure partners and investors and restructuring loans will likely die, and creditors will start lining up and positioning themselves from that perspective and not working on workouts, if you will. And so, I mean, I just share it with you, so just to be, from my experience and just to be practical, not to mention recruiting and students for next year will likely not be possible either. And so, you know, just, I understand what you were saying, but from my experience, and the law requires this transition team is formed. And so instead of site visits to look and see how are we doing for as an improvement, it'll be site visits about how do we shut this down, where do these things go, and helping students and families to find the schools that they're going to go to when the school's no longer in existence, presumably at the end of this year. And so we would hope that you at least give us another month to see the things that you asked about that are formal discussions right now can be brought into fruition, like the restructuring of the loans and things of that sort, to give us that additional time, because I believe that, as your lawyers already said in my conversations with them, that one of the words about is that even if you vote next month, if you're going to give us at the end of the school year, that 90-day period will still run and will not jeopardize any of your legal rights if you do ultimately choose to start that process.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, were you going to say something, Daniel?
Well, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you all for coming. And I know I'm new, so I had a lot of catch up and reading to do, just as my other new board members do. And I'm a big proponent of more schools, not less, and high quality education and high quality teachers. And when I see, but at the same time, as board member Mr. Smith is saying, that I'm getting the title correct. We still are fiscal stewards of taxpayer money. So I want to be cognizant of how we are spending our tax dollars. And I want to make sure, I mean, at this point, as you were saying, that this has been going on for a long time. And it does seem, as you stated, from the many years and the presentation we saw from from Mr. Cleveland, that, this is the first time you've seen anything positive in the since Christmas, I guess, since the last one. Ever. So, I don't know if you're right, we are setting a precedent, but I'm not sure. Honestly,
if you guys need more time, I mean, that's perfect subject too. Mr. Egan just said it's real. It's absolutely correct. I mean,
So if we delayed a month, it would not necessarily prevent the shutdown from occurring at the end
of the school year. But as a parent, if I'm going to find another school for my child, this is the time that I would be looking for enrollment for next one. So I'm just going to put that out there.
And Travis, maybe it would help if we clarify what happened if we issue a notice of termination. What happens in the 90 days? I heard something about a hearing maybe
Yes.
And what gets considered at that hearing, what's our responsibility to decide at the hearing?
So what the statute allows is an informal hearing to be requested within 14 days after the notice issues. And beyond that, there's some flexibility as to when the hearing date would occur. But that they would have the opportunity to present more evidence to you about the ultimate decision as to whether termination is appropriate under these circumstances.
All right, so, I mean, if you do want to delay, and I will, be adamant that there is some type of like, what does it look like in 30 days to make this keep going? You know, what specifically we're looking for, like, it's like 30 days, outcomes aren't going to change at all. But in 30 days, the financial situation, according to the numbers provided by this accounting firm that was provided to us, there will be a approximately, and we have, you know, projected to have negative 300,000 plus in on the balance sheet equity. We will have a cash shortfall of $275,000 on June 30th. Excuse me, as of today, they have a negative cash shortfall of 272 bind. That's a lot of cash. Just put in 150. You know, what does success look like in 30 days to you guys? Just to me, it's like, you know, the most pressing thing is to make sure this is a going concern. They gotta have money. So where's the $275,000 going to come from? If that number is ending cash balance of 0 and they make that big of a change, okay, I mean, that you're starting to get there, but you still have enrollment issues, you still have, you know, teachers coming and going, which isn't always, you know, reflective of, it could be because they're holding people accountable for the first time that they're quitting. So I'm like that. I would prefer not to be talking about shutting down a school with any number of students, but gosh, kind of exhausted by it.
I think Kendra's.
Well, I think the presentation was great. I think you guys are fantastic. But for me, when I think about those kids and 3 years of lost learning in a child's K through 12 education, that's a lot. And they're hinging on what happens in this future. What's the promise that that education is going to get better? What's the promise that those kids, you know, you've got someone who's maybe 11th grade, they're 3 years under par now. They're going to be going to college soon. Are we really, I mean, what are we setting these kids up for? I mean, financially, obviously, you know, but the kids, what about these kids?
The way that I see it is, I'm a huge proponent, I know we all are, of high performing charter schools. I was lucky enough to go with the governor yesterday at Santa Fe South, which is an incredible school, incredible charter school. And the Cherokee Nation has a charter school out there that does this immersion type of learning. It's got incredible results too. Sovereign is not a high performing charter school. There's no way to mince words on that. And I take very seriously our responsibility that the state legislature and the governor has given us as a charter authorizer. As a charter authorizer, it is our responsibility to ensure, to Ms. Wesson's point, that all the students in that school are getting a great learning environment, that it is it is exceptional. We're not talking about something here that is average. Every metric that I've been shown, that they are well below average. And by the way, this is not a testament to the two women in front of us. It is a testament to folks who came before them. So there's student performance. And then there is our responsibility for the taxpayers of the state of Oklahoma. That these are their taxpayer dollars that have gone into this school, but still, even with their work, we're talking about $400,000 nearly that they are in debt. And it's one thing to have verbal commitments, but it's another thing to have the money coming into school. And again, she has invested and she has shown, I mean, it's not a matter of the work she's done. But for us, the responsibility entrusted in us by the legislature, by the governor, as an authorizer, and by the general public, to ensure that their taxpayer dollars are going to schools that are going to use them in a fiscally responsible way and to educate kids. Charter schools are to be exceptional and show us ways to think outside the box and new ways for kids to learn. And I don't see any indicator that they've done that. And so then my latter thought is, Ms. Wesson's point, what are we going to do for these kids? These kids, if we don't make action now where these parents know clearly then it's time to start looking for another school, and we will do all that we can in the Department of Education to make sure they know their options. They know where they can go. We are working to mobilize very quickly for students, for parents all around the state to know that, but we can take a particular interest here on these students because it is heartbreaking. They will have to look for another school, but I think it's even more heartbreaking that they have lived this. Everything we just saw laid out, these are kids that will never get that time back. I feel very comfortable in moving forward with termination.
I may, so I kind of came in, when I looked at the record, I do not disagree one iota with what you had stated. And I thought I'm sorry, but it's failed. I will confess, I have been moved by your presentation. I have been moved by what I perceive as a very strong financial background on your part and an attack to solve the financial problems. I've been moved by the educational experience that you're bringing to this. I want to give you another chance. That's what my heart is telling me. And my head is struggling with the past performance. And do I simply am I persuaded by a powerful presentation with no real track record yet to say, okay, one more time, and I know that's been done before. And it pains me to have, what the heck? I'm on the board for the first time, and this is the thing we're dealing with, something where you guys clearly care about these kids and you want it to be different. And you make an excellent point. What happens from an academic standpoint? And that's the thing that hurts me. I think financially, I kind of believe you can figure that out. But in 2020, when the performance when the students were not getting what they deserved, and people gave them another chance, if I support an extension and then there's no improvement, have I just condemned another generation, another year, another class group of students to failure? That's what I fear. I don't want to do that, but I also don't want to deny the passion I see you bringing to this to fix it. And to have sovereign students not be at the bottom, why shouldn't they be at the top? So, if I may, if we rescind the charter, have you contemplated that and what you might do for those students in this mission?
You're ready to keep them, and at the very least, we've been focused on doing right by these students. And to us, sovereign not being there is not right for these students. I agree, in 30 days, you're gonna come back and look at academics and say, well, at least you know where you're at, right? But we can also come back and be a good foundation, have a good foundation for you all to know that we're trending upwards. And that's what I can guarantee for 30 days.
Financially, what do you think you can do if I gave you 30 days?
I think I'm gonna secure I will secure 2 loans, Sandy South, Chickasaw Community Bank, the terms of which will be favorable to our school. And then secondly.
Debt forgiveness is what you're striving for.
I'm striving for. And then second to that, we will know whatever the tribal check that's on its way, we'll know what that is. I don't know what it is yet.
And that's one thing I'm curious about. I mean, if you got additional cash infusion, somebody said, yep, just like you have done, if I give you 30 days to say, all right, show me that these connections and this passion translates to others, and you've got more cash in the bank now to fund the teachers that you need to make sure these students perform up to are given the chance to perform to the capability that they have already, but they've probably been harmed by poor teachers, it sounds.
Absolutely. I can tell you that in 30 days, we will absolutely have more cash in the bank. We will also have a projection that is positive with carryover. Okay. can say those things. I don't know those numbers.
I know.
But I certainly can.
I want you to succeed. I think we all want you to succeed.
Well, I may state that moving to terminate, our kids will drop out. We will not be able to recruit. I will not fundraise. It will be done.
No, I understand.
That's the.
I think I lean towards at least I don't think a 30-day delay, just, again, I'm new, I can be outvoted. But I think give them another 30 days to say, okay, Warriors, go demonstrate, come back in 30 days and show me massive accomplishment. Take this threat of losing your charter as additional motivation to say, we will not be defeated. We're gonna fight for these kids and bring an army of support behind that. And maybe we can change the trajectory. So that's where
Knowing your work history, I think if you were sitting in my seat, you would agree with me. If you weren't standing there, so, and this, again, has nothing to do with my admiration for what both of you have done. But, we need to make a motion here, and I make a motion to initiate termination proceedings by the end of the school year. Sovereign, and I don't like that. At some point it has to come to an end.
If I may, I'd recommend that if the motion be to issue the notice of termination effective probably June 30th, which would be the end of their fiscal year. I think that would probably make most sense. If that is in alignment with the spirit of what.
Is that what you, yeah. I think
Does that, I'm sorry, does that mean that they can request an informal hearing?
Correct. They still have the opportunity to request the informal hearing within 14 days of us issuing the notice.
And, but if we approve this, that means that they will no longer be seeking to remedy or, how do we move forward? It'll be how do we resolve?
Sucks.
It does. I'm gonna second that.
Okay. Take on the record.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Burton.
Nay.
Ms. Lee Peck. Aye. Ms. Wesson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes. So that is agenda item 7. So we now move on to agenda item 8. And this is Travis Jett, I believe is running this agenda.
Yes.
Travis, just a quick question. I don't think we voted on 7A. Is there action on that or that was your?
Yes. No, I would say no action is needed. We're required under the statute to have a report, which Mr. Cleveland provided, so you don't need to take action.
Great, thank you.
So I have a hunch we may be headed into executive session shortly.
Oh, okay.
I think we're about to.
Yeah, do we need to make a motion? Can we just go?
Real quickly. Okay, item 7A is about the emergency suspension of Sarah Holdegroat. 8A, thank you. Is Ms. Holdegroat here, or does she have counsel here? So you all have had the opportunity to look at the board's application. The cliff notes is a probable cause affidavit on file alleging that she sent inappropriate messages and pictures to a minor, and the request by the department is to move forward with an emergency suspension. You have the facts. I'd recommend that we resolve into executive session so that you can ask legal advice on this topic.
So moved.
Mr. Burton?
Yes.
Ms. Lee Peck? Yes. Ms. Wesson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Is she a fancy camera?
We'll go back.
She's to the front door. You may give it back.
There it is.
That's a good one, Savannah.
So I need to ask that.
I need to ask for that.
Okay, guys, I do need a. Turn that on. Thank you, Jeremy. You're all over it. I do need a motion to reconvene. One of executive session reconvene.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Reynolds.
Right?
Mr. Burdick.
I are here. We can't find both. Here's what you're looking for. I am here.
Ms. Smith. Here. Ms. West. Okay. Mr. Smith.
You were that problem student who was always like present.
You're
Okay.
present.
In executive session, both items 8A and 8B were discussed. Counsel for the department, Brian Cleveland, was not present during deliberation on the emergency suspension application regarding Sarah Hull McGroat. And this time it would be proper to make a motion regarding the application if there is one from the board.
Make a motion. Commission an emergency or summarily suspend the teaching certificate number of Sarah Gold, the growth pending, an individual proceeding for revocation or other action.
Second.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Burdick.
Aye.
Ms. Lee. Aye. Ms. Weston.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Aye.
Aye.
There's no actions needed on 8B.
So then we do have on here new business, agenda item 9. There was nothing that was brought to me. I don't think that we have anything for new business. Okay. Got nothing? Okay, well then, all we need now is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Gonna make a motion.
You can, how do you ask when you don't have the roll call?
Join just saying like.
Okay, so let's do that.
Okay, all right, then we're adjourned. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There we go.
No, we need to see it.